Howdy, this is Lemmy with RevZilla. Welcome back to...
I didn't realize you were going to start right there. Just let's back that up.
Oh, when he does the snap and then points, that's
Gotcha.
like three. That's the goes.
Gotcha.
Howdy, this is Lemmy with RevZilla. Welcome back to another Highside, Lowside. I'm joined yet again by Joe Zito. We got Spurgeon here today. Okay,
Hello.
got introduced guests. We can check that right off the list. We're flying through this already, guys. Introduce topic. Okay, so...
Whoa, before you do that, we have to remind people to check out the podcast, too. That's you missed that on your list. There's the podcast forum.
That's next. You're out of order. You're out of order.
Man, oh man.
You can go.
I'm all jumpy today.
Speaking of the
There's a
podcast,
podcast. Yeah, so if you want to listen to this in your car while you're riding along, you can also check out the podcast forum. There we go. Check
that one
Nice
off.
job, boys. Nice job.
All right, we're talking sort of generally today about motorcycle gear, personal protective equipment on a motorcycle. I think that our range of opinions here is probably going to be far and wide. I imagine those of our audience probably also going to be a little bit all over the map. I expect this fully to be a show. Let's get right into it, fellas.
Very controversial subject.
Of course.
But it's also a subject that we get a lot because we work for RevZilla, right?
Oh, of course. This is we're going to lose our jobs after this one. Let's get that out of here. All right, guys, let's kick it right off. What are the essential pieces of gear?
A motorcycle. Start with that.
It's literally not motorcycle gear in any way, shape, or form.
No, I mean,
it's what you need the most.
I really, truly won't go down the street without a helmet. You know, like very bare minimum, a full face helmet. I've crashed and skidded on my face in an open face helmet, and not good. Can't ruin the moneymaker. So
Wait,
face helmet.
This is how you make your money
I'm sorry.
now?
Yeah, just for the audience, could you please define what the moneymaker is? Because that might not be crystal clear on you. Okay, so it is. Okay, right there.
Note he is pointing at his face.
Spurge, what do you got?
I think it's different for everybody. I don't think it's necessarily something that I can define for other people, but I think for me, I'm with Joe. If I'm riding on the street, or short of maybe like running down a few blocks to the cafe for a cup of coffee on a Sunday morning, a helmet is pretty much a must for me. A full face helmet. I don't really ride an open face for street riding.
Gotta save the moneymaker.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts a lot to get hit with bees or like
or
bugs
the ground.
too. Yeah, or the ground.
I would think that protective mustache would help you out.
Actually, I got hit with a rock once in a dirt bike helmet, and it bounced off the mustache. So the mustache, in a way, is a piece of protective gear for me at this point.
Can we put that on the site? How much would that sell for on RevZilla.com?
Do you have an answer for that one, or are you just going to skip over that?
I was going to skip over that. So here is my answer to this. I'm sure I'm going to take a bunch of flack from you guys and from the audience. I don't want to talk to you about this. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to talk to anybody about gear. This kind of comes back to last episode. We were talking about technology. You took sort of that anti-government role, which is, I mean, normally that's sort of my area to sit in, but you jumped right in on that. But I feel like this is sort of the same thing. Like, do what you want to do, you know, like you do you and I'm going to do me. And I don't think either of us should really have much chat.
I mean, I think it's, live and let live, but also you're skirting the question.
I am skirting the question. So to actually answer the question, like, well, this is just treat this like politics or sex or religion. I don't want to talk about it.
All you want to talk about is politics, sex, and religion.
Topic number two interests me greatly.
At the lunch table, it's a different story.
That's true. My essential pieces of gear, I would say probably are twofold. I'm not going to jump on a bike without a set of boots, and that's actually not so much protection as it is operation. I can't start most of my bikes without a good set of boots. And then gloves. I've been in a lot of accidents, and I haven't always hit my head. You guys are going to the helmet. For me, it's gloves. My hands always seem to hit the deck and get fouled up. So, like, I'm not getting on a bike without gloves and boots, most likely.
Yeah,
I think my big thing, right, is a lot of times when riders are first starting out, there's an intimidation factor of, oh, well, I have to have all this gear, otherwise I can't ride a motorcycle. I think for me, I bought a helmet. Everything else was what I had, right? So I wore, a pair of old Fry boots and my Levi's and this old leather jacket that I had laying around and like a pair of like $15 gloves that I had just to have my hands covered. Right. But the only piece of gear that I went out and bought was a helmet. But I think for me, it was being covered in case I did go down. You're not going to, roll along the asphalt.
So incidentally, I would actually like to amend my answer. I realized I didn't give you a completely honest answer. What I talked about before with boots and gloves, that is what I will leave the house in. Almost always, if I haven't brought a full face lid, I will turn around because I've remembered that I have no eye protection, which is actually mandated pretty much everywhere. And also, I never seem to remember until my eyeballs are dry.
Yeah, but I also watch you put like the full face helmet on and then pull the visor up and
I like
ride without it anyway.
All right, we can get that out of here. This hasn't really gotten heated yet. I'm still waiting.
I don't think
It's
we're all
very
angry
early.
about gear. Yeah.
Well, the internet's angry about it. Have you guys looked at the internet
they're
recently?
going to start throwing comments in the bottom. That's where the anger will come
So here's
from.
we're actually the perfect question. For
Oh.
Do either of you attempt to influence another rider when it comes to personal protective equipment? So I'm almost referencing specifically now the ATGATT crowd. For those of you out there in listener land who are not familiar with the term ATGATT, it's all the gear, all the time. It's either an acronym to describe wearing all your gear or a major world religion. I'm not clear on that yet. So what do you guys say? Will you guys try and influence another rider and their gear decision/choice?
If it's somebody that I know and we're doing something like riding off-road where you could really bust your ankle or really bust your knee and be really far into the forest where I'm going to have to carry your carcass out, I will say, please put some legit boots on, or please, might consider some knee braces. I'm not of the mindset of like, oh, I see a guy at a stoplight wearing just a t-shirt and I'm like, oh, dude, you're a jerk. Go home and get your jacket. I don't care, whatever.
I just want to double check, if you will. You work for RevZilla, and your interest in getting other riders into gear is so you don't have to help them.
Yeah, it's my self.
You pull enough people out of the woods, and it ruins enough of your riding days.
Right.
I can understand that, where you want people to be safe. I will never tell someone what they have to wear. But I got started at RevZilla on the customer service side of things. A lot of what I do is evaluating the product and making videos with that. And I do enjoy giving recommendations. So if someone comes to me and says, hey, what's your favorite dirt helmet right now? Or what's your favorite pair of street boots? I do have opinions, and I love to have the conversation back and forth with people. I don't like when it's like, oh, what's the best helmet to wear? It's like, well, I can't tell you that. I can tell you what I like. So for me, I do enjoy having those conversations. We do it a lot at either off-road events or, a lot of times if I'm hanging out at a motorcycle shop, you'll get people just talking to you casually about that stuff.
Sure.
And I like those
But
conversations.
you're talking about people. I guess what I'm saying is you're almost responding defensively. Like if a question is asked of you, you will answer it, but you're not going out of your way.
No,
necessarily
absolutely. And again, with everybody that I ride with, everybody has their different level of gear. My off-road crowd is usually pretty much head to toe. But when I'm on the street, I've ridden with friends that wear minimal gear, and I'm all geared up, and I don't judge them for it. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to start a conversation about gear with them, unless they come to me and say, I really like your helmet.
You told me you had little leaflets, like little tracts that you pass out for people.
That is absolutely not the case at all.
So firstly, I don't really think of gear for anybody. I think it, as this binary thing. I think a lot of the ATGATT folks tend to get very binary, right? Like it's either you're either with us or you're against us.
Right.
I will sometimes. So it's weird because I feel like, maybe I will wear a helmet, maybe I won't wear a helmet. I feel like I get a lot of flack from both sides. Both sides think I'm a traitor, which is great. I think I will, though. I will attempt to influence people into some things that you might not expect. So, I will actually encourage people to wear a full-face helmet. I think, in the old bike world and the Harley world, there's some reticence to try on a full-face helmet because they don't look right. Mm-hmm. The reason I do it is not really so much for safety. That's great, too. But full-face helmets do a lot of other stuff really well, too. They're really good at keeping your head dry. They're better than just about anything else I've found. They're also great at keeping your head warm. You look at a helmet, it's built just like a beer cooler. It's like a thermos for your dome.
Well, the question that I have for you is because you have a perspective.
I'm asking the questions.
You have a perspective. Yeah, I know, but we switch this role sometimes. You have a perspective that Joe and I don't have. Is that you have a son that rides a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. So for your recommendations for him when it came to gear, did you have anything that you wanted to see him in?
This is not in the cards.
I know.
You've gone off the script.
But I'm just curious because the question is do we recommend gear for people?
I think that's a very fair question. When he's a grown man and he lives under his own roof and he's buying his own motorcycle, then he can wear whatever the hell he wants.
Right.
I would still probably cringe if I saw him not all geared up because I'm his dad and that's how that goes. But for the time being, though, that's not the case, though. Yeah. So why don't you go ahead and suit it on up there,
I think that's
son.
interesting, right? Because you would if I showed up at your house without a helmet on, you wouldn't think twice to say something to me. But I think it's interesting.
If you were asking me for money for the movies, I sure would.
Exactly. But I think it's cool because I think about the way that my dad when I first started riding, my dad was really strict about hey, don't let me catch you without this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. And I think it's different, when you have that perspective.
I just feel I could put a much longer riding day in with a legitimate full face helmet. even if it's like a vintage style built well or something like that has a chin bar that even if I'm just wearing sunglasses, I could just go so much farther because it's a quieter lid. I could wear.
So that's the big
noise
thing, right?
wears you out.
The noise wears you out
Right.
after a while. I think you don't realize how much a full face helmet just keeps everything a little bit quieter.
Yeah.
So I will attempt to influence people, but in a roundabout sort of
Yeah.
way. All right, let's get rid of that question. Let's move on to the next one here. Oh, I like this one. What are some good reasons? Well, with no input
Guys,
from you goons.
I like this question. Oh man,
Actually, I like all
job.
of them. Right.
Good
I think
job.
this show is great. All right. So, what are some good reasons not to wear gear?
Me personally, here I'd go with the Zito stories again.
Oh man, buckle in,
Dude, after changing a tire on my Tiger when it was like 100 degrees out and 100% humidity, and I was literally drenched head to toe in sweat, I just rocked a t-shirt the rest of that day. I folded up my jacket and just strapped it to the back of my seat. So I think in extreme cases when it's super duper hot, I know mesh jackets are great and things like that, and body armor that has some abrasion resistance is great. I've gotten to the point where I felt like I was going to keel over at a stoplight just because it's 100 degrees. You're sitting on an engine that's 200 degrees. The black top is cooking. The cars around you are cooking. And other extreme cases too. Like I've ridden across. That was
It's so
very
much
loud.
louder than I was expecting it to be.
When I rode across Arizona in the summertime, and I felt that just wearing a t-shirt, I was getting like super dehydrated really quick. You don't realize how much that dry, hot air just takes the moisture out of your body through your skin. So I felt that wearing my jacket, even though it was super hot at highway speeds, was keeping me cooler.
But I think with all the different technology out there for gear, the temperature isn't so much to me as how heavy the gear is. So it's not about how ventilated the gear is, but how heavy the gear is.
Yeah.
Because with the off-road situation, you get into a lot of these full armored suits, and they weigh a lot. Whereas if you go with like a mesh jersey and just the body armor on, so I think for me, it's not about when it's not right to wear gear, but like trying to fine tune what pieces of gear to pull out the closet that'll match for what you're doing. But the problem with that is then you have to have an arsenal of gear, which I do. But I think for a lot of people out there, when they are just starting out, you are limited to using what you have. And again, it comes back to personal preference and really what you find appropriate. It's a hard answer to. Or hard question rather to answer, because I mean there's times where like when we got the CSC in here, I felt most comfortable on that bike in a pair of tennis shoes and a t-shirt and like rolling down at 25 miles an hour to get coffee in the morning. Like it was just like I felt more comfortable on that bike in that scenario.
That's one thing I admit that is dumb that I do. I will dress differently dependent upon the bike that I'm riding, and I have
or the uniform.
Yeah, so it's not really the aesthetic, but it's something about like the overall vibe.
But
You know what I mean?
that's not. I don't think. I think I've seen you show up because we've had this conversation before with like the adventure thing, right? Like I've seen you show up in like the leather jacket and like just a regular helmet on your adventure bike, like.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're wearing the full head to toe adventure gear the whole time when you're on that bike.
But I will not really get on my 60s Triumph hardtail bike in my full climb Gore-Tex with my showy helmet. You know what I mean? Like.
Yeah.
I know that it's dumb. It rains on either bike that I'm riding. For some reason, if I'm on the old bike, I feel like, I should just suffer, like they did it in the old days. It's so stupid, but I'll admit it.
The other thing too, at least for me, I don't know about you guys. I've definitely racked myself up before not wearing gear, but generally I will also shed gear too for range of motion and for freedom of movement. It's not really much good if you're wearing gear and you can't move on your bike and you wind up, in a crash because you can't move the way you're supposed to on your motorcycle.
But if you get used to, like when I first started wearing knee braces over like knee pads, like the knee braces took one or two rides to get used to, and I would say, for those first two rides, I was like, man, I don't have the range of motion. These are bulky. But now I can't ride without knee braces.
All right, well, you're answering a different question, which is what are some good reasons to wear gear? That's not even the one we asked.
My gosh.
Everybody knows why you're supposed to wear gear.
I'm sorry.
Oh, this is going to be a good one, too. You guys, I like this. Spurgeon. I want
He
Spurgeon.
gets so excited
I want
about his
Spurgeon
own
to go. No,
questions.
I'm excited about this because I think you're going to get all fired up about it.
Oh, man.
Spurge, what are your thoughts on laws regarding gear? Would you be
Laws.
okay with more or less restrictive laws or
the
current
deal.
laws or
I don't-
lawlessness?
We don't
chaos.
have helmet laws in Pennsylvania, and I still wear a helmet. I just have a problem with the government saying you have to do this, because then we accept it, and then it becomes a slippery slope. Like, what if the government says you have to wear a jacket? Like, what if the government says, like, you have to wear, I don't know, like, what if you're in your car? Like, we already have seatbelt laws, and that's great, keeps people safe, but then, like, it just keeps going.
Quick time out. I just want to point out you are very fired up right now.
I'm not fired up. I'm just
you're
like,
fired up.
But no, it's just one of those things where
Spurge does not let the man keep him down.
yeah, it's all I can think of is like that line in Empire Records where he's like, damn the man.
Damn the
Save the
man.
empire. No, I don't know, man. Like, I get it. Like, some people need rules to save them from themselves. I just don't believe in that. Like, I believe we're going down a slippery slope here. I don't want to carry on this conversation. This is like religion and laws.
Actually,
really
actually,
is.
hang
It's
on one
very
second. That's my
controversial.
answer. So you will not take my answer. You will continue with your own answer. Or Joe
So
will
again,
give us an answer.
I think it's a slippery slope. I understand why the government feels they need to step in certain situations, but I don't think that the government should have to tell you to do what's smart.
So you're for the current laws or against them?
I don't have helmet laws in Pennsylvania. I don't have to worry about
Well,
it.
but don't you live in, like, haven't you ever lived anywhere else in
have.
America? How do they have
I did
helmet
not
laws?
like
Are
it.
you all right with
I
that?
didn't like it. I lived in California. I lived in Tennessee, both of which the states had helmet laws, and I was a bit bothered by it.
All right. So before you jump in, I just want to ask: did you ever not wear a helmet in those places? Just
In those
to
states?
exercise your
No,
right.
I did not. No. I mean, maybe around the block, like when I was like working on a bike, and I would just take it around the block to see if it was like okay. But I never risked it.
Spoiler: Spurge was working on it. Probably wasn't.
No,
okay.
no.
Definitely wear a helmet when you test ride any bike you've worked on.
Stop it. I know how to do a few things with wrenches. No, I'm not trying to break the law. I'm not trying to push the law. If the law says I have to wear a helmet, I'll wear a helmet. But in Pennsylvania, the law says I don't have to wear a helmet, and I still wear a helmet. I guess I just don't think that the law should necessarily be there to, make people do what they want to do.
My take is that the helmet law to me is equivalent to the car seatbelt law.
Do you wear a seatbelt?
I do wear a seatbelt, and I do wear a helmet. I don't have a problem with that, but I do agree that it is a slippery slope. So, if we let them say you have to wear a helmet no matter what when you get on a bike, regardless of the displacement or whatever, will they come down the line and say, like, oh, you need to have CE-rated boots, gloves, jacket, all this stuff? That's kind of a drag. I think that you got to protect your melon. Have you been concussed?
I have been concussed.
And you've
once
been
or twice.
concussed?
I've been knocked out pretty good. I don't know if I've ever had a full.
Well, it's not
concussion that
cool.
I've been diagnosed with.
You could legitimately get weird for a few weeks after just banging your head on the dirt. So if you skid your skull off the pavement, that's a bad time. So I don't know, man. I think that it's okay for them to say you got to wear a lid.
I was just going to say it kind of goes back to we've had some interesting debates on Common Tread about the licensing laws in Europe, and and setting like displacement regulations. And what's interesting to me about my own head is that doesn't bother me. Like that doesn't bother me. That doesn't bother me. The fact that in Pennsylvania you have to take a series of tests before you're 18 before you're allowed to not wear a helmet, or you have to be over a certain age before you're not allowed to wear a helmet. I think they put some guidelines into play. But for me, as far as like the licensing for motorcycling going into play, if the government said, hey, you can only, for the first 2 years, you have to ride a 300cc or less, I'd be like, well, it makes a lot of sense. That'll probably save a bunch of lives for, 16 to 18-year-olds. That, for some reason, that doesn't bother me. But like the government telling me that as an adult I have to do something, that kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Just to loop back and get your thoughts on this, more or less restrictive laws? Yes? No? Change
Just
them?
let it be. How it is okay.
Okay. All right. And then...
Just don't do any more, any less.
Yeah,
just leave
just
it alone.
leave it cool. That's
no
Right
new
here.
stuff, no
With
old
nothing
stuff.
Quit while we're ahead.
I'm assuming we're not getting an answer for you on this one because you're not talking
No, it's not.
about
I don't want to talk about it. I mean,
Yeah.
I really don't want to talk about it. That is my answer. Like, if you're going to actually twist my arm, which it sounds
Says
like
the host of a talk show.
Well, you're supposed to do the talking.
Episode
I
7.
do the
I don't
asking
wanna
and you
talk
do the-
about
You
it.
do the explaining. No, I kind of don't really want to chat about it that much. I think the government, generally speaking, has far too much intrusion in our lives to start with. Like, we could talk about prostitution. We could talk about marijuana. We could talk about 6 jillion different things.
Let's back up to
that I think-
prostitution. Let's make that the next question.
Right. Should you have to wear a helmet with a prostitute? That's what everybody wants to know. Yeah, like this is one of those things where I feel like, I mean, it's like if I've definitely smoked a cigarette before, and someone will ask me like, "Oh, don't you know that's bad for you?" Yeah, of course I know. Like, I'm not brain damaged. Like, yeah, obviously I know it's bad for me. Same thing with not wearing a helmet. Like when people ask you like, "Oh, don't you shouldn't wear a helmet, you can get in an accident." I know I could get in an accident. That's obvious. Like,
So what you're saying is this comes down to the acceptable amount of risk which you're willing to take on for yourself. Like you're willing to take a certain amount of risk on.
I think there's that, but then I think there is that, and then the other thing I think too is like I think there are people who fail to realize for some motorcyclists, the danger is part of it. Like that's a good part of it. Like yeah, you can go get racked up. That's why this. So
let me
cool.
let me ask
like,
let me ask a question, and I know I keep playing your role here.
Wait, fat guy?
But this is a
Mad
question
guy?
that I'm going to throw a question out there that's kind of like against what I'm arguing. What about the people that legitimately don't understand the risk? Like, what about, again, a younger audience that doesn't understand really what could happen in the event of a crash? And I think that's something we all fail, because we were all 21 at one point in time, right? We're raged up on hormones, we're out, we're doing whatever we want to do, and we don't see any potential failure in our future.
Yeah.
So what about that guy or girl?
You ask them if they understand the risks. Anybody who says no, you load them up into a pickup truck and you kick them off at 45 miles an hour. Like I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like I think that's one of the risks you take.
I think
right?
that's something that a lot of young folks forget is that when you get wrecked on a bike, it's not really all of your problem. You just kind of lay around and wait till you get pieced back together and
by other people around.
By other
you.
people. So it's like, man, I got married in 2008. I immediately got in a huge motorcycle crash and was in the hospital for 4 days. And then when I came home, my wife had to help me up and down the steps and bring me food. And, you know, like it was just a super drag for her. And it's something that I think a lot of young dudes...
Just because you were home all day.
Well, it's just like, I think a lot of young dudes don't think of that. Like, man, if I get really hurt, like not only am I not going to be able to go to work, am I going to be able to cut the rent if I'm not going to work? Who's going to come over and take care of me and all this stuff? So it's like, you know, I think in a way it's a little bit selfish to knowingly take crazy ass risks. I see a dude on an R1 in flip flops and a tank top, you know, doing 150 down 95. It's like, dude, come on.
So I think that's...
wait, hang on. Somebody's getting judgy.
I just think of that dude's family.
I
you know
look
what
at
mean?
myself, right? And the gear that I wear and the risks that I take at 36 are completely different than the risks that I took when I was 20. You know, and I think for me, if we can pass on a little bit of educational aspect of this to somebody younger that's watching, it's like, I don't know, man, like it hurts when you go down. And if you're wearing a little bit of gear, it helps it to hurt less and you have a better chance of walking away.
That 20-year-old skull is just as thick as yours was. They ain't gonna listen to you. And it's fine.
I know that. And again, I'm not expecting to change many lives out there.
But to your point, like, you know, getting all racked up and, you know, being a burden on everybody, that's not like exclusive to motorcycles. I mean, what's the number one killer in these United States?
Man.
I know it's not hippopotamus attacks. That's Africa.
I think it's number 3. Heart disease. It's heart disease. But,
right.
you know, there's people don't get all militant about
listen,
burgers.
you know what else is funny?
Well, they do. Are you kidding me? Like in this day and age, like the health food craze and like the government making you put the calories on the menu. So every time I go into McDonald's, I feel really guilty. I'm like, oh man, I am a fatty.
You want to talk about motorcycles being dangerous? The amount of ice cream you consume when you're on 2 wheels.
Oh, dude.
Every time. I did not want to eat that much ice cream. We're out there, and Chase just kept being like, Chase is our newest producer, and he's like, you got to eat another ice cream cone. We didn't get the shot yet. I'm like 6 ice cream cones in. I'm like, oh my God, not another one. All right. I mean, I hit a point where like I pretended to like push back a little bit, and I'm just like, eat more.
All right, guys. I'm seeing a white flag waving.
Oh, we got our last question already?
Yeah. Is the ATGATT evangelist helping or hurting the cause? Or is he irrelevant?
Well, I think anybody who's super preachy about their beliefs and tries to dump them on you is not really my favorite kind of dude. If you have your gear and you're riding with some folks and they say, hey man, like what's the deal with that helmet? Or like, what's the deal with this jacket? Like, is this armor doing anything? I'm more than happy to talk about that and talk about how it saved me and you know, some get-offs or whatever. Like, that's cool. I can get into that. But the flip side of that really is that it's that crazy barrier to entry to motorcycling. Like, you know, we talk about it all the time. Like, motorcycling is struggling to get new riders involved. So if you tell a guy who might have saved up his, part-time job money after he's going to college or whatever, gets a $500 bike, and you say, oh, well, you should get an $800 helmet and a $700 jacket and a $300 pair of boots too.
Do you have a $100 head?
Right. So there's that.
Yeah,
So
that drives me up a wall. I'm with Joe on this one. I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to say, hey, this is going to help make you safe. But really, what it's doing is it's making somebody feel kind of crappy about the fact that they can't afford something. And I think really the messaging should be across the board, like where the best you can afford, and where what you think is right for you. But as far as are they hurting motorcycling, I think anyone that's trying to preach their beliefs on someone and get aggressive about it can be a detriment, whether it's about gear or the kind of bike that you should be riding or whatever it is. Like, let people do what they feel comfortable with,
live and let live.
I would like to qualify my answer as a salesman for RevZilla. I appreciate all you fine folks spending dough with us. That having been said, if you wear all the gear all the time, that's awesome. If that's what's cool for you and you're not pushy about it, we're good with each other. The real pushy people, these are the essential oil salesmen of the motorcycle world. A bunch of safety nerds. Had enough of them. Don't want to hear them. They're wearing me out. It's wearing me out.
There's something to be said in every which direction. No gear guy, all the gear guy. There's arguments in every which
I don't
way.
think there's a right answer for this one.
Right,
Man. I think this is going to be what's right for you guys out there.
Right there.
That's my biggest takeaway is like I'll wear what I want to wear, and I'm happy to answer any questions about how I think about things, but I'll never tell you have to do something.
And I still don't want to talk about it. All right. Well, that having been said, I think that's gonna do us for this episode of Highside, Lowside. Thanks for joining us. For my colleagues Spurgeon and Joe, I'm Lem, of course. Sayonara. We're out of here.